I'm Dr. Michael Harrison, and today I want to share something that could make a real difference in your life. In fact, what I'm about to tell you might be one of the most important pieces of health information you'll ever hear. And here's what frustrates me as a physician who spent 40 years treating patients. This information has been hiding in plain sight. The research is there, the evidence is overwhelming, yet somehow this simple truth about blood pressure rarely makes it into the conversation you have with your doctor during those rushed 15-minute appointments. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. While I'm a physician sharing evidence-based information, this video is for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for personalized medical advice from your own doctor who knows your specific health history. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen. That said, let's get into it. Here's what stopped me in my tracks when I first encountered this research years ago. We've been so focused on one side of the blood pressure equation that we've almost completely ignored the other. Everyone talks about sodium. Cut your salt, reduce your sodium, watch those processed foods, and yes, sodium matters. I'm not disputing that. But here's the part that changed how I practiced medicine for the last 2 decades of my career. Potassium may be even more important than sodium for blood pressure control, and the vast majority of adults over 50 are dangerously deficient without even knowing it. I understand how frustrating this can be. You've done everything right. You've cut back on salt. You've tried to eat better. You take your medication faithfully, and still your blood pressure creeps up. You see those numbers on the monitor, and you feel a sense of defeat. I've seen that look on thousands of patients' faces over my career. That feeling of doing everything you're supposed to do and still not getting the results you deserve. What if I told you that the solution might not be about what you're taking away from your diet, but what you're not putting in? What if the missing piece of your blood pressure puzzle is sitting right there in your produce section, waiting for you to discover it? In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what's happening in your body when potassium levels drop too low. I'll explain why this deficiency is so common in adults over 50, and it's not just about diet. I'll share the science in a way that actually makes sense, without the medical jargon that makes your eyes glaze over. And most importantly, I'll give you a practical, food-based approach that you can start implementing today. Not expensive supplements, not complicated protocols, just real food, real science, and real results. We're going to cover 5 key points today, and I'm saving the most important one for last. So stay with me all the way through, because that final point is the one that ties everything together. Let me start by telling you about a patient I'll call Robert. Now, Robert is like many of the patients I saw over my 40 years of practice. He was 62 years old, a retired engineer who prided himself on being analytical about everything, including his health. Robert came to see me because his blood pressure had been creeping up, despite being on 2 different medications. He was frustrated, and honestly a little scared. His father had died of a stroke at 67, and Robert could feel that same destiny approaching. Robert told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Doc, I feel like I'm doing everything right and my body is betraying me anyway." That sense of powerlessness, of losing control over your own health, I hear it almost every day. And the truth is, Robert had reason to be concerned. His systolic pressure was consistently hitting 155 to 160, even with medication. When I ran a comprehensive metabolic panel and looked at his dietary intake, the picture became clear almost immediately. Robert's potassium levels were at the very bottom of the normal range, what we call functional deficiency, not low enough to trigger an alarm on a standard lab report, but low enough to undermine everything else we were trying to do for his blood pressure, and he had no idea. This brings us to our first key point. Why is potassium so critical for blood pressure control, and why are so many adults over 50 running on empty? Your blood vessels are not just passive pipes carrying blood around your body, they're dynamic, living tissue with muscles in their walls. When those muscles tighten, your blood vessels constrict, and blood pressure goes up. When they relax, your vessels dilate, and blood pressure comes down. Potassium is absolutely essential for helping those blood vessel muscles relax. Without adequate potassium, your vessels stay constricted, and you're fighting an uphill battle against physics itself. But that's only part of the story. Potassium works directly with your kidneys to regulate how much sodium your body holds onto. Here's something that might surprise you. Even if you're eating a low-sodium diet, if your potassium is low, your kidneys will hold on to more sodium than they should. It's like having a drain that won't open all the way. No matter how little water you put in, the sink still fills up because the water isn't flowing out properly. Research from Harvard Medical School has shown that the ratio between potassium and sodium in your diet may be more important than either mineral alone. In fact, a study published in the Archives of Internal Medicine following over 12,000 adults found that those with the highest potassium intake had a 20% lower risk of dying from any cause compared to those with the lowest intake. That's not just blood pressure, that's overall survival. Now here's where it gets concerning for adults over 50. As we age, several things happen that work against our potassium levels. First, our kidneys become less efficient at retaining potassium. You're literally losing more potassium in your urine than you did when you were younger. Second, many common medications prescribed to our age group actively deplete potassium. Certain blood pressure medications, particularly thiazide diuretics, are notorious for this. So the very medications meant to help your blood pressure may be creating a deficiency that makes blood pressure harder to control. I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. Third, digestive changes that come with aging can reduce how much potassium you absorb from food. Your gut just isn't as efficient as it used to be. And fourth, many adults over 50 have reduced their food intake overall, which means less potassium coming in while more is going out. It's a perfect storm for deficiency. The research is clear on this point. A major study from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey found that less than 2% of Americans meet the adequate intake level for potassium. 2%. That means 98 out of every 100 people you know are not getting enough of this essential mineral, and the deficiency is even more pronounced in adults over 50. This brings us to our second key point, and pay close attention here because this is something I see patients get wrong all the time. Magnesium is potassium's essential partner, and you cannot optimize one without the other. This is where the magic really happens, and it's where most approaches to blood pressure fall short. Let me break this down the way I explain it in my office. Potassium needs to get inside your cells to do its work. It doesn't just float around in your blood being helpful. It needs to move from outside the cell to inside the cell, and that movement requires energy. That cellular energy comes from something called ATP, and your body cannot produce ATP without adequate magnesium. So if your magnesium is low, you can eat all the potassium-rich foods in the world, and a significant portion of that potassium will never get where it needs to go. I think of magnesium as the gatekeeper. It holds the door open so potassium can enter. Without the gatekeeper, potassium is stuck outside, knocking on a door that won't open. But here's what makes this even more important for blood pressure specifically. Magnesium has its own direct effects on blood vessel relaxation. It acts as a natural calcium channel blocker, which is exactly what several classes of blood pressure medications do synthetically. Magnesium helps those blood vessel walls relax and soften. A meta-analysis of 34 clinical trials published in the journal Hypertension found that magnesium supplementation reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 2 points and diastolic by 1.6 points. Now that might not sound dramatic on its own, but when you combine magnesium's effects with optimized potassium intake, the combined impact can be substantial. And here's the concerning part. Magnesium deficiency is even more common than potassium deficiency. Research suggests that up to 75% of Americans don't meet the recommended daily intake for magnesium, 3 out of 4 people, and the deficiency increases with age for many of the same reasons potassium deficiency increases. Less efficient absorption, increased losses, medication effects, and reduced food intake. This is exactly what happened with a patient I'll call Sarah. Sarah was 68, a retired teacher who had been managing her blood pressure with medication for about 8 years. She came to me because she was experiencing muscle cramps at night, some heart palpitations, and a general sense of fatigue that she couldn't shake. When I looked at her labs, both her potassium and magnesium were in the lower third of the normal range. Not flagged as abnormal, but definitely not optimal. Sarah told me she felt like she was falling apart piece by piece. That fear of losing her independence, of becoming a burden on her children, it was keeping her up at night even more than the leg cramps. Here's what we did together, and notice I say together, because this wasn't me telling Sarah what to do, it was us working as a team. First, we looked at her diet and identified opportunities to increase both potassium and magnesium through food, not supplements. Second, we worked with her cardiologist to review her medications and make some adjustments that would be less depleting of these minerals. Third, we established a routine that made the dietary changes sustainable, not overwhelming. Fast forward 4 months. Sarah came into my office and the first thing she said was, "I feel like myself again for the first time in years." Her blood pressure had come down 12 points systolic on average. Her leg cramps had virtually disappeared. And that scared look she had in our first meeting, it was replaced by something that looked a lot like hope. Now, I'm not telling you Sarah's story to promise that you'll have the exact same results. Everyone's different. But what Sarah's story shows is that when you address the underlying nutritional deficiencies, you give your body the raw materials it needs to regulate blood pressure naturally. This brings us to our third key point, which is all about the practical application. Where exactly do you find potassium and magnesium in food, and how much do you actually need? Let me start with potassium. The adequate intake level set by the National Academy of Medicine is 3,400 milligrams per day for men and 2,600 milligrams per day for women over 50. But remember, less than 2% of people meet these levels, so we have significant room for improvement. When most people think of potassium, they think of bananas. And yes, bananas are a decent source, providing about 420 milligrams in a medium banana. But here's something that might surprise you. Bananas aren't even in the top 10 potassium sources. Let me share what I call my potassium powerhouse foods. Sweet potatoes are remarkable. One medium-baked sweet potato with the skin provides around 540 milligrams of potassium. That's nearly 130 milligrams more than a banana. Plus you're getting fiber and beta-carotene. White potatoes are even higher. One medium-baked potato with the skin delivers about 920 milligrams of potassium. That's more than a quarter of your daily needs in one food. I know potatoes have gotten a bad reputation, but when we're talking about mineral density, they're incredibly valuable. Leafy greens are outstanding sources. 1 cup of cooked spinach provides 840 milligrams. 1 cup of cooked Swiss chard gives you about 960 milligrams. These are some of the most potassium-dense foods available. Beans and legumes are excellent as well. 1 cup of cooked white beans provides over 1,000 milligrams of potassium. 1 cup of lentils gives you about 730 milligrams. These foods also provide magnesium, fiber, and protein, making them incredibly nutrient-dense choices. Avocados deserve special mention. 1 whole avocado contains approximately 975 milligrams of potassium, plus healthy fats that support cardiovascular health in other ways. Salmon and other fatty fish provide significant potassium too. A 6-ounce serving of salmon delivers about 800 milligrams, along with omega-3 fatty acids that have their own benefits for blood pressure and inflammation. Tomatoes and tomato products are convenient sources. 1 cup of tomato sauce provides about 728 milligrams. 1 cup of tomato juice provides about 550 milligrams. Now let's talk about magnesium sources. The recommended dietary allowance is 420 milligrams daily for men over 50 and 320 milligrams for women over 50. Pumpkin seeds are magnesium superstars. Just 1 ounce, about a quarter cup, provides 156 milligrams of magnesium. That's nearly half a woman's daily needs from a small handful of seeds. Almonds and cashews are excellent sources. 1 ounce of almonds provides about 76 milligrams, while 1 ounce of cashews provides about 74 milligrams. Dark chocolate, and this is one of my favorite recommendations because it actually gets people excited, is rich in magnesium. 1 ounce of dark chocolate with 70% or higher cacao provides about 64 milligrams. Black beans are magnesium-rich legumes. 1 cup of cooked black beans provides about 120 milligrams. Spinach appears on both lists, which is why I consider it such an important food. 1 cup of cooked spinach provides about 157 milligrams of magnesium in addition to its potassium content. Whole grains contribute significantly. 1 cup of cooked quinoa provides about 118 milligrams of magnesium. 1 cup of brown rice provides about 86 milligrams. Now here's what I want you to notice. Several foods appear on both lists. Spinach, Swiss chard, black beans, salmon, avocados. These dual-source foods are particularly valuable because they're helping you build both minerals simultaneously. When I work with patients, I emphasize these crossover foods because they make the dietary changes more manageable. I want to pause here and remind you, I'm not suggesting you change any medications or treatments without speaking to your prescribing physician. What I'm sharing today may inform a conversation with your doctor, but any changes should only be made under their guidance. These dietary approaches are meant to complement your medical care, not replace it. Alright, stay with me here. We're about to get to the really practical stuff, but I want to make sure you caught everything we just covered. Potassium helps your blood vessels relax and helps your kidneys excrete sodium properly. Magnesium is essential for potassium to enter your cells and has its own blood vessel relaxing effects. Both minerals become harder to maintain as we age, and most people over 50 are deficient in both. Food sources are preferred over supplements because they provide these minerals in natural ratios with other beneficial compounds. This brings us to our fourth key point, why I recommend a food-first approach over supplements for most people. Now here's something that might surprise you. This thing that most people think is helpful Taking high-dose potassium or magnesium supplements without guidance can actually be problematic and sometimes dangerous. Potassium supplements are actually limited by the FDA to 99 milligrams per dose, which is about 2% of your daily needs. There's a reason for this. Potassium levels that rise too quickly can affect your heart rhythm, and this is particularly concerning if you have kidney problems or are taking certain medications like ACE inhibitors or potassium-sparing diuretics. High-dose potassium without medical supervision is genuinely risky. Magnesium supplements are less restricted, but high doses can cause digestive problems including diarrhea, and they can interact with various medications including some antibiotics and bisphosphonates used for osteoporosis. When you get these minerals from food, several things are different. First, the amounts are released more slowly and steadily as you digest. There's no sudden spike. Second, foods contain complementary nutrients that work together. The vitamin C in potatoes helps with absorption. The healthy fats in avocados aid in mineral uptake. Third, it's virtually impossible to overdose on potassium or magnesium from food alone. Your body regulates absorption from food much more effectively than from concentrated supplements. There's another reason I prefer the food approach, and it relates to something I've observed over 40 years of practice. When people focus on taking a pill, they often don't change the underlying dietary patterns that created the deficiency in the first place. But when they focus on adding specific foods, they naturally crowd out less healthy choices and develop sustainable habits. This reminds me of one of the most meaningful conversations I've ever had with a patient. I'll call him Thomas. Thomas was 71 when I first met him, a former construction supervisor who had developed high blood pressure in his late 50s, followed by type 2 diabetes in his early 60s. He was on 4 medications and felt like his health had become his full-time job. Thomas looked at me across the desk and said something that broke my heart a little. He said, "Every meal feels like a minefield now. I don't even enjoy food anymore because I'm so worried about what it's doing to me. I don't know who I am without my health, and I feel like I'm losing it piece by piece." That fear Thomas expressed, the fear of losing himself, of becoming defined by disease rather than by the life he'd lived and the man he'd been. This is something I've heard in various forms from countless patients over the years, and I want you to know if you felt that way, your feelings are valid. This is hard. Managing chronic conditions while trying to maintain your quality of life and independence is genuinely challenging. What I told Thomas and what I want to tell you is that food can be medicine without being punishment. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. It's not about eliminating everything you enjoy. It's about adding foods that support your health while still enjoying meals that bring you pleasure. With Thomas, we started simple. 1 serving of leafy greens daily, a handful of pumpkin seeds as an afternoon snack, swapping regular potatoes for sweet potatoes a few times per week. Small changes that didn't feel overwhelming but moved him in the right direction. Over the course of about 6 months, Thomas's blood pressure improved enough that his doctor was able to reduce one of his medications. His energy improved, and perhaps most importantly, he told me that he'd started enjoying food again because he felt like he was doing something positive for himself with each meal rather than just avoiding harm. This brings us to our 5th and final key point, and this is the one that ties everything together. How do you actually implement this in your daily life without feeling overwhelmed? I'm going to give you what I call my 3+3 approach. 3 potassium-rich foods and 3 magnesium-rich foods to focus on initially. Not complicated lists, not expensive specialty items, just 6 accessible foods that you can find at any grocery store. For potassium, start with baked potatoes, sweet potatoes, or both. Include them in your meals 3 to 4 times per week. Remember, 1 medium potato with skin provides nearly a quarter of your daily potassium needs. Add 1 daily serving of leafy greens. This can be a side of cooked spinach with dinner, some Swiss chard sautéed with garlic, or a spinach salad at lunch. Aim for at least 1 cup cooked or 2 cups raw daily. Include beans or lentils at least 3 times per week. This can be as simple as adding white beans to a soup, having a side of lentils with dinner, or including black beans in a taco or burrito bowl. For magnesium, keep a container of pumpkin seeds visible and accessible. Have a quarter cup as an afternoon snack, or sprinkle them on salads, oatmeal or yogurt daily. This single habit provides about 40% of your daily magnesium needs. Include a small handful of almonds or cashews daily. 1 ounce is about 23 almonds or 18 cashews. This adds another 20% toward your magnesium needs. Allow yourself an ounce of dark chocolate 3 to 4 times per week. Choose chocolate that's 70% cacao or higher. This provides magnesium plus antioxidants, and it makes the whole approach feel less like a diet and more like a lifestyle you can actually enjoy. Now here's how to make this sustainable. Don't try to implement everything at once. Start with one change this week. Maybe it's adding the daily serving of leafy greens. Do that consistently for a week until it feels automatic. Then add the next change. By the end of 6 weeks, you'll have integrated all 6 foods without any single week feeling overwhelming. Track your blood pressure at home so you can see if these changes are having an effect. I recommend taking your blood pressure at the same time each day, ideally in the morning before medication and coffee, to get consistent readings. Share these readings with your doctor at your next appointment, and please have a conversation with your physician about what you're doing. Ask if you're on any medications that might be depleting potassium or magnesium. Ask if there are any interactions you should be aware of. Your doctor is your partner in this process, and they need to know about the dietary changes you're making. Before I let you go, I want to share one more story that I hope will stay with you. I'll call her Eleanor. Eleanor was 64 when she first came to see me, recently widowed and struggling with blood pressure that had spiked in the months after her husband's death. She was grieving, she was stressed, and she was terrified of having a stroke and leaving her grandchildren without a grandmother. Eleanor embraced the food-based approach I've described today with a dedication that inspired me. She started a small container garden on her apartment balcony where she grew Swiss chard and spinach. She joined a cooking class at the senior center and learned new ways to prepare beans and lentils. She kept a bowl of pumpkin seeds and dark chocolate on her counter and thought of them as her blood pressure medicine that actually tasted good. But what Eleanor told me 6 months later was about more than her blood pressure numbers, though those had improved by an average of 14 points systolic. She said, "Taking control of what I eat made me feel like I was taking control of my life again. After Harold died, I felt powerless about everything. This gave me something I could do every day that was for me, for my future, for the grandchildren I want to watch grow up." That sense of agency, of taking an active role in your own health, rather than being a passive recipient of whatever disease has in store for you, that's what I hope you'll take from our time together today. Let me bring together the key points we've covered. First, potassium is essential for blood pressure control through its effects on blood vessel relaxation and sodium regulation. Second, magnesium is potassium's essential partner, required for potassium to enter cells and having its own blood pressure benefits. Third, both deficiencies are extremely common in adults over 50 due to age-related changes and medication effects. Fourth, food sources are preferred over supplements for safety and effectiveness. Fifth, the 3+3 approach gives you a practical, sustainable path forward. And remember, this information is meant to educate and empower you, not replace the advice of your personal physician. Take what you've learned today and have a conversation with your doctor about what's right for you. If you found this helpful, if you learned something today that you can use, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. I release new videos every week specifically designed to help you take control of your health and maintain your independence as you get older. And I promise to always give you the science without the hype. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these foods are you going to try adding first. Are you a potato person or more inclined toward leafy greens? I personally read every comment, and I'd love to hear from you. If you know someone who struggles with blood pressure, a spouse, a parent, a friend, please share this video with them. You might be giving them information their doctor never had time to explain. Next week, I'll be talking about another hidden factor in blood pressure control that relates to something most people do every single day without realizing its impact. You won't want to miss it. Take care of yourself.